Hi everyone, I'm Carol Keller, independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Illinois in the US, and I'm excited to be here as part of our February 2022 Woohoo Weekend, and I am featuring today products from the Heart and Home Suite. And I'm going to turn my camera around right away so that we can get started. So this is the card that I made today. And I am still working on the metric measurements, so I'm not going to provide any measurements while I'm doing the video, but I will put them in the description once I have verified, because I don't want to give measurements that are incorrect. So this is our card. I decided I wanted to do a trifold. And so this is what I came up with, and I was inspired by a card that was made by Claire Daly, who's an Australian demonstrator. So I used her idea as a jumping off point. We're going to get started right away. The one thing that I can tell you, the measurements that I am sure of, are for the base card. So if you're using an A2 card like I am, we're going to cut at 5.5 by 11. So you only get one card out of one sheet instead of the usual two. And if it's an A4 card, it is 14.85 by 27.5 centimeters. And we're going to score. For the A2 card, we're scoring at, we're going to open the arm up, and we're going to score at 3 3/4 and 7 3/4. And if you're in metric, the scoring is, I think it's 9.5 and 19.5, but I will double check. Okay, so I'm not going to give any more measurements because I don't want to give the wrong ones, but like I said, I will double check that. So we end up with our 2 score marks, and we're just going to fold with that short end being in the front. I'll put that back so you can see it. And I think for now I will tie it back up. And I did come up with an idea already when I was awake in the middle of the night to add to this. So I am going to try something as we go along, especially if we have time. So the first thing we need to do is adhere some of our DSP. And like I said, I will give the measurements in the description later on. But the 2 most important ones that you adhere first are the 2, see, I will have to open it up again. The 2 that are on the front of the short panel and the inside. So that's the inside panel. And I have my front panel. So the inside one is easy. We're just going to adhere it like we normally would. You can use Stampin' Seal like I am. You can use multi-purpose liquid glue, whichever you prefer. And that gets put in right away. And I will say, you should go really close to the edge. Well, I think it's going to be okay, but closer to the edge on the sides is better because we are going to be cutting something out. So we're going to position that. And then for the front panel, I'm going to just do it this way because it's easier. We are only going to put adhesive right now on this side. And that is because we have to add ribbon. And so we're going to need an open space, but we have to die cut first. It's not really complicated, but you do have to do things in the right order. Ask me how I know. I was having some issues putting it together, and hopefully I've worked through them all and can save you some aggravation. I've got the die that I'm going to be using to cut out the flowers. And so all I did was position it now, because again, this is the front of the card, and you're going to position it so that the stem is straight up and down and it's centered on the card. So about like that. And all I did was put a piece of washi tape down to hold it in place, and I ran it through my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, but I ran it back and forth because there are 3 layers, and that was enough to get through all 3 layers. The first time I did it, I ran it through once, and I was able to take 2 layers out and then run it through again. So either one of those ways will work. You end up with this. And now we're going to adhere our ribbon. So I have cut a couple of pieces of the Pale Papaya Open Weave ribbon Here's one. And maybe we'll just cut another one because I don't know where the other one went. You know how that goes. If you saw what my sides of the table look like now, it's not very good. We'll be doing definitely some cleaning and organizing when this is done. So I will just cut a second one. And again, I'll give the measurements at the in the description. And so what you want to do is you want that ribbon to go right here to be glued down and then have this glued over it. So now I am going to use my multi-purpose liquid glue. And I'm going to take the first one and just put some glue right in the middle and lay that down like that. And I don't have my head over the project, so I hope it is in the middle. It's a little more tricky to do it on camera. And then we're going to put glue on the edge and over the ribbon to adhere the rest of that down. Because even when you burnish, I think it's difficult for the card to lie flat, which is why the ribbon helps. And you saw that I didn't burnish because I knew there would be kind of no reason to, since we are using the ribbon. And then for the other piece, that is going to go on the front panel or the second panel and on the left-hand side. So we're going to do the same thing here. Whoops, and I just did it wrong. Just did it wrong. You have to be careful. It's this side. But I'm glad I realized that before it stuck. That is the beauty of the multi-purpose liquid glue. All right, and that is the panel we want. So I'm just going to use my Stampin' Seal. I really love my Stampin' Seal, and I know that it's strong enough to hold that ribbon in place along with that multi-purpose liquid glue. And we'll put that right on over the top of the ribbon. And I noticed when I finished the card that there was more of a border here than here, and I almost changed it to make them identical, but I actually liked it better that way. I thought it added a little more interest, so hopefully you'll agree. And then I think we can just put the other two panels in. And this was another happy accident of having the pale papaya, because normally it's white. You can write on it. You could just leave it white, and you can see what it looks like. But I included the pale papaya because, again, I had put the flowers that we're going to color in a moment in the wrong spot. I had them here instead of here. And when I took off the flowers, it was sticky and I needed something to cover it. But then when I used the pale papaya, I thought, I'm going to keep that. I like that. So we have some stamping to do on that, but I think we can still put it on first anyway. But if you prefer, if you're worried about making a mistake, you can stamp and then add it later on. But I'm going to be brave. And then the same thing with this one. All right, so that's basically the base of the card all decorated. And so next, I'm going to bring in the flowers that I die cut and stamped. And I do have oh, that's right. I was going to show you how to do that. Let me move this aside. So before I do that, let me bring in my Stamparatus and show you what I did. So I have the negative of the die cut. Basically, this would be unstamped, okay? And you put it, the way you set it up is you're going to put the blank piece that you die cut, that's white, position your, because you've already positioned your stamp, and I have a video that you'll be seeing later this hour that shows you how to position stamps for die cutting and actually for punching. So then we're going to just ink it up, pretend that I did, and then stamp it, and then you pop it out with take your pick tool or your fingers. So I was going to show you, I was going to actually stamp it, but I can't find my blank one. But that's okay. Like I said, I just did want to let you know that there's a tip for how to position that's coming later this hour. And now I'm just going to bring in some blends. And the other thing I did before we start coloring is I have a scrap here, and I have the little bee that is in one of the sets in the suite. I stamped both of them in basic gray, or smoky slate, excuse me. I wanted a light color, so I stamped in smoky slate. And then this also is run through your Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. But that I have already cut out. And I have it right here because we're going to do a little bit of coloring. So for the bee, I just used, I think it's So Saffron Blends, yes. So I used the dark and the light. And I did, it looks like there's a little bit of the body. Whoops, I want the brush end. A little bit of the body. But I left the wings alone. And I did that in the light So Saffron, and I used the dark for this part of the body. And I colored even over where it's darker at the end. And that was it. So he's just got a little tiny bit of color. For the flowers, the paper, let me bring the card back in. The paper has, the green in here is garden green, but we do not have garden green blends. So I ended up using Soft Succulent, and it worked because they're not actually together. There's Soft Succulent when you open it this way, but then inside it's just the garden green. So I thought that worked out, and they're close enough, I think, that it definitely works. I am not going to color the whole thing, but I will show you, especially for the flowers, what I did. I used the dark pale papaya and basically did a little bit of an outline close to the center of the flower because I was going, I keep moving that card away and I want it here. I was going with what is, actually it's not even on this paper. I didn't use the paper that I'm modeling. I used this one where they had the center white and then added some color around the edges, but not all the way to the end. And that was kind of my thinking. So I kind of outlined with dark pale papaya and then came back in with the light, leaving that center white and kind of filtering it out toward the edges, but not all the way. So that's how I did all of the flowers. And then the leaves mostly I colored in the light Soft Succulent. I keep taking the wrong end. Sorry about that. And then just adding some definition with the dark pale papaya, or the dark Soft Succulent, just to give it a little definition. And then you can go over it with the light again. I like to do that sometimes to make sure that everything is blended. So that was what I used. Those are the only colors that I used for the flowers. And I ended up with this. And so to adhere it to the card, I just put some Stampin' Seal on the back. Actually, I take that back. I did use Stampin' Seal, but then I added some glue. So I'm gonna just bring the glue back in because you want the edges adhered so that when you open the card, if someone opens the card repeatedly, it stays put. So we're gonna kind of use the glue around the outline. And then a little bit here. So I do recommend using the glue for this part. Bring this back in. And so then you just lay, again, you lay it like it is when people are first going to open it, so you know it goes in the right place. And we're gonna fit it right through where we die cut so that we know it's in the right spot. And then press to make sure that glue adheres. And then the other thing I was thinking, and I've got to grab my blending brushes to do it, I was going to add a little color to the very front panel to see what that looks like. So I am going to try that. I'm going to bring in a scrap to use, and I'll bring in that pale papaya ink. And what I was thinking, because when I was choosing the papers for this, I really wanted to use more of the flowered ones, but I felt that they were going to take away from this and it was going to be just too busy. but I also felt that this was sort of plain. So my thought was, in the middle of the night, was to add some pale papaya around the front. So I'm going to do that on this one and see what it looks like, and then you can decide which one you like better. So I'm just bringing in, and I just want it around the edges, bringing in some of that pale papaya. And what I'm hoping is that it will give, draw your eye more to that flower bouquet. So we'll see. So yeah, my thought is just to add color just around the edges, and then we'll see what that looks like. So I don't know. We'll see if it's a win or not. I don't know. I think I like it. And we'll see what it looks like when we are completely finished with the card, which we almost are. For the bee, I wanted to position the bee to be looking like he was just landing on the flower and yet not interfering with the opening and closing. So I put him right at the edge, and I used glue dots for that. I'm going to grab my glue dots and just put him like right there. So again, it looks like he's landing on the flower or has landed on the flower, but it doesn't interfere with the opening and closing. And then we're just going to make a tag. For that, I have the thank you stamp, and it says thank you for inspiring me, but I just wanted the thank you. So I'm using my soft succulent Stampin' Write marker, not my blends. You want your Stampin' Write marker for this. And I'm just going to color the thank you. And that's how we can pretty easily stamp just the part that we want. And I'm going to bring that pale papaya back in. And we've got the flowers, one of the flowers from one of the sets. And I like the way the flower came up like that, so that's going to go pretty much in between thank and you, but yet mostly underneath it. And we're going to punch that out. And I debated, let me punch it, just center it and punch it. So we get almost all of those flowers. I debated putting this on with dimensionals, but I didn't want to take away from that bouquet. I want that to be a little bit more of the star of the show. And I used my glue dots because I also didn't want it adhesive over this part because it would interfere with the opening and closing of the card. So I just put a glue dot on each end. Whoops. I'm going to move that a little bit. Whoops. And position it down here so that it's over the bouquet. And then we've got a little more stamping on the inside. I did You're the Nicest. And I did it in the Smoky Slate, but I think I'm actually going to use Garden Green for this one, since it matches that green on the inside. And we'll put that right here. Yeah, I like that better. It's a little bit darker. It's a little bit more prominent. And then I did use the gray, the Smoky Slate, for the flowers. So I'm going to bring that back in, and then I actually colored them a little bit with the blends too, because it won't show through the back. Oh, and the other color I thought of using for the sentiment was Cinnamon Cider, since it's in here. So I think that would work as nicely too. And then we'll just bring the blends in, and I'm just going to bring in the dark pale papaya and just again add a little bit of color around the edges. Hopefully you can see that okay. And then with the light again, bringing them closer to the edge. And then the inside is done. And we'll tie it up. And then the only thing we need to add is some bling. And I debated using the matte dots that come in the suite, but I really wanted some color because there is so much neutral on the background. I wanted to add a little pop of color. So I'm using the loose flower flourishes, and I just put them on with my glue dots. So a larger one in the lower right corner, and then the two smaller ones. I just kind of scrunched the glue dot since it's a little bit big, kind of rolled it up on my finger and put it underneath. Except now it's sticking to my nail. There we go. And the other one the same thing. All right. And then last but not least, I added a brushed brass butterfly because I am loving these. What would also work, there are bees in the catalog that I think would work nicely to go along with the bee, but I didn't have them. So I added those gorgeous butterflies instead. But that is the card. I hope you like it. Thanks for joining me. I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.